We need to talk. Graham's words sliced through the peaceful Saturday morning like a cold dagger. I looked up from my notebook, pencil hovering over the design sketches for my latest app. His steely expression and taut jaw signaled that this wasn't going to be a casual chat. "What's wrong?" I asked, my chest tightening involuntarily. Graham cleared his throat. "I've met someone else. Her name is Jules, and she's pregnant with my child." The words hung in the air like a noxious vapor, slowly suffocating me. I struggled to process this gut punch of a revelation from the man I'd loved and trusted for over a decade. "You're leaving me? For some pregnant mistress?" I choked out, tears already stinging my eyes. Graham's callous mask cracked, revealing a flicker of shame before the arrogance resurfaced. "It's not that simple, Arya. My feelings for her are real. I want a divorce, a fresh start." My mind whirled, desperate to make sense of this nightmare unfolding before me. "What about Ethan? What about our family?" "He'll understand eventually," Graham said with an indifferent shrug. "I don't want this to get messy. Let's make it easy. You get the house, and I'll give you a settlement to cover basic expenses for you and the kid." Anger flared within me at his audacious proposal, so utterly dismissive of my role and worth. My hands curled into fists as I fought for composure. "You arrogant son of a bitch," I hissed through gritted teeth. "After everything I've sacrificed and contributed to build our life together, you think you can just toss me aside with a paltry settlement?" Graham recoiled slightly at the venom in my tone, but his expression hardened. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Arya. You're a smart woman. You'll figure things out. Just don't fight me on this." In that moment, I realized the true depth of his deceit and delusion. This man, who had once professed eternal devotion, now saw me as an obstacle to casually discard. Well, he had severely underestimated me. I forced a smile, rage simmering beneath my calm veneer. "Don't worry, dear, I'll make this very easy for you." With that ominous promise, I turned back to my sketch pad, ideas for my most ambitious design. Zachat began taking shape, a masterpiece that would bring Graham's life crashing down around him. Let the games begin. Over the next few weeks, Graham's behavior went from callous to downright vile. His thinly veiled hostility seeped into every interaction. "This house is going on the market next month," he announced one evening after returning from another rendezvous with his pregnant mistress. "I need my share of the assets." I slowly looked up from the tablet where I'd been reviewing my latest app designs. "Our house? The one I invested thousands of hours and every penny I earned to renovate and decorate?" Graham sneered. "You agreed to take it in the settlement. Don't get possessive now." My grip tightened on the tablet as I battled a surge of rage. "That settlement you proposed is based on your fantasy world, where you get to walk away unscathed." "Watch your tone," he warned, eyes narrowing to slits, "unless you want to risk losing everything." In that moment, Ethan wandered into the room, comic book in hand. "What's going on?" Graham looked at our son with obvious disdain. "Nothing, kid. Just settling some domestic issues with your mother." I fought back tears, both for Ethan's confusion and Graham's reprehensible indifference toward his own child. Mustering all my strength, I stood up. "That's enough, Graham. If you want to discuss splitting assets, you'll go through my lawyer first." I turned to Ethan, forcing a reassuring smile. "Why don't you go play your video game? Daddy and I need to talk business." Once Ethan left, Graham slowly approached until we were inches apart, his words laced with venom. "You're making a huge mistake, Arya. Don't try to take what's mine. You won't like how far I'll go." His rancid breath assaulted my senses as confirm of my resolve. Graham's true nature was finally exposed for the whole world to see, including Jules and her unborn child. Returning to my tablet, I tapped to open a file labeled Scorched Earth. A icy smile played across my lips. "Don't worry, dear, I've already started gathering assets of my own. This is one mistake you'll never recover from." In the weeks that followed, Graham's arrogance reached stratospheric levels. Blinded by visions of his grand new life with Jules, he seemed to forget I was an artist and technical genius in my own right. "Don't get any ideas about fighting me on this divorce," he sneered one evening over a dinner I no longer had any appetite for. "My lawyers will bury you and your sad little design career." I casually took a sip of wine, maintaining an aura of nonchalance. "Is that so?" Last I checked, my sad little apps were generating healthy six-figure incomes, but you've never cared to understand that side of my work. Graham's cocky grin faltered briefly before reasserting itself. Whatever pocket change you've scraped together will be nothing once I'm awarded my settlement. Half of everything, including your tech company assets. My hand tensed around the glass. He really was delusional if he thought I'd let that happen after his betrayal. I forced an eerie calm over my features. You're smarter than that, Graham. Surely those Harvard friends taught you not to underestimate an adversary's resolve. His eyes flashed with a dangerous glint, but I refused to be intimidated. Not anymore. I'm doing you a favor, Arya. One last chance to walk away with some dignity intact instead of the scorched earth humiliation I have planned. That arrogant smirk, he had no idea the extent of my preparations. With a casual shrug, I rose and began clearing the dishes. Whatever helps you sleep at night, dear. Lucky for you, dignity has never been a huge concern of mine. The following days, I stayed late at my studio, not just designing apps, but carefully laying the foundation for my grand counterstrike. Financial records, damning evidence, contingency plans, nothing was left to chance. Graham, the fool, carried on with his daily routine of work, spin classes, and trysts with his pregnant side piece, oblivious to the maelstrom brewing. Let him enjoy this fleeting delusion a little longer, because soon his world would come crashing down in glorious high definition, and I intended to savor every moment. You want scorched earth? I muttered under my breath, executing a final compression on the encrypted file. You've got it. I stared at the thick manila envelope on my best friend Mara's desk, my mind still reeling from rehashing all the sordid details of Graham's betrayal. Mara let out a low whistle as she snapped the folder shut. He's digging himself one hell of a pit. The financial mismanagement alone would give you grounds for a very favorable settlement. Forget the settlement, I said with a resigned shake of my head. I don't want his tainted money or anything to do with that feckless snake anymore. Lifting her chin, Mara fixed me with a determined look. Which is why we bury him, completely. I felt a prickle of adrenaline course through me. As my closest friend and confidant for over 15 years, Mara knew my inner strength and convictions better than anyone. You're sure you want to go scorched earth on this? There's no going back once we deploy. Her mouth set into a grim line. He'll be ruined. Professionally, financially, the whole picture. A tiny smirk played across my lips as I reached into my bag and produced a sleek external drive. That's exactly the point. Mara accepted the device, instantly all business. What's on here? The opening salvo. I leaned back, recalling all the late nights I'd spent meticulously assembling my grand checkmate. Revised financial statements detailing Graham's criminal misuse of company funds to bankroll his affair, plus evidence of tax evasion, embezzlement, you name it. That's just for starters. Mara arched an eyebrow as she secured the drive. You've certainly been busy. I'll have this reviewed by the forensic accountants right away. Good. We'll combine that with the reproductive coercion case I'm building to ensure Jules gets awarded primary custody and child support to the absolute maximum. My friend's eyes widened fractionally at my ruthless calculation before an approving smile stretched across her face. It's all in the details, isn't it? Make him penniless, living a broke shadow of the profligate existence he deluded himself into expecting. Exactly. I felt a savage sense of satisfaction, like a lioness having cornered her prey after an arduous hunt. Graham gets to learn that, in the end, every debt gets paid. Mara reached across her desk and gave my hand a firm squeeze. This is going to get brutal. You know that, right? Are you sure you're ready? Channeling every ounce of quiet determination that had carried me through countless battles, I met her gaze without flinching. I'm already in the arena, Mara, and I will not be the sacrifice this time. Checkmate. I murmured the word under my breath as I executed the final keystrokes, uploading my ultimate creation to the app stores. Sitting back, I couldn't resist a satisfied smile as the download counters began ticking upwards. The birth of my revenge magnum opus, Fidelity Games. On the surface, an innocuous casual game, but one intricately laced with symbolic motifs and thinly veiled references that would become abundantly clear to anyone aware of Graham and Jules's disgraceful affair. My own unique art style ensured there was just enough plausible deniability. For now. Over the next few days, the app's simple but addictive gameplay sparked an organic, viral success. Review after review marveled at the depth of subversive satire and delightful tastelessness underlying the experience. I watched the social media chatter escalate with distinct relish, conveniently isolated in my home studio under the auspices of working on a big project. Ethan was carefully shielded on playdates and weekend activities with friends, blessedly unaware of the gathering storm. Not that Graham seemed to even notice. He was too consumed with his delusions of grandeur, bragging to anyone who would listen about the wildly successful real estate deals he was closing to set up his new family. His arrogant boasts only made the actual counterstrike that much sweeter. Finally, the day arrived. A well-timed leak exposed images and developer comments from Fidelity Games, revealing the thinly veiled revenge narrative that mirrored the real-life infidelity and betrayal of the upscale broker and slimy exec characters. The outrage explosion was glorious, as local media and social influencers pounced on the scandal. And Graham's affair with his side-piece secretary became unavoidable front-page news. "What the hell is this?" Graham burst into my studio unannounced, eyes wild and face contorted with rage as he shoved his tablet in my face, displaying scathing articles and social posts utterly eviscerating his and Jules's reputations. I calmly met his gaze, reveling in his impotent fury. "Why, hello, dear. Fancy meeting you here in the lair of my sad little design career." His jaw tensed until the muscle danced with barely contained violence. "Don't play coy with me, you manipulative bitch. I know this insane publicity stunt is you're doing." "Insane?" I said softly. "You seem to have misjudged the situation, and my resolve. This is simply the free market deciding what merits rewarding." Leaning back, I steepled my fingers with a thin smile. "Like I told you, you made a mistake, and this is only the opening move in ensuring you never recover from the full consequences." In the days following Fidelity Games' explosive reveal, Graham's world rapidly unraveled into chaos. Incriminating leaks detailing his financial crimes and misuse of corporate funds began surfacing across media outlets. Outrage mounted from investors and clients over his lurid, publicly exposed infidelity scandal. One particularly savage article branded him as the slimy exec personified, a crass, unfaithful philanderer willing to sacrifice integrity for fleeting indulgences. His mistress Jules didn't escape unscathed, pilloried by the public as a grasping, immoral homewrecker. I'd be lying if I said I didn't savor every fresh humiliation raining down upon the pair. Watching their reputations get dragged through the mud was more cathartic than I could have imagined. "This is insane. You're completely out of control." Graham's spittle nearly hit my face as he erupted during one of his increasingly frequent rage-filled tantrums. I simply arched an eyebrow, sipping my coffee. "Am I, though? From where I'm sitting, this all looks like the consequences of your own sordid actions finally catching up." His hands clenched into trembling fists as he fought to regulate his seething anger. "You think you've won? That you can just destroy me like this?" "Oh, Graham." I skipped softly, tenderly brushing away an imaginary piece of lint from his jacket lapel. "I'm not destroying you. I'm just composed the overture for the world to see you for the vapid, morally bankrupt leech you truly are." A flicker of uncertainty clouded his features before the bravado snapped back into place. This is just noise, Arya. My attorneys will have this garbage killed within days." Allowing myself a tiny, infuriating smile, I shook my head slowly. "Will they, though? Because from what I've heard, your oversized gambling debts have rendered you incapable of affording much in the way of decent legal representation." Graham froze, the blood visibly draining from his face, as my delivered checkmate landed with the precision of a perfectly aimed bullet. "You? How?" "Like I keep telling you, dear, never underestimate the lengths I'll go to ensure you reap what you've sown." My smile became a knife's edge as I watched victory glint in his eyes. "This is just the beginning." As if on cue, Graham's phone began ringing with a frantic call from his increasingly nervous employers demanding answers. With shaking hands, he answered, only for his face to contort into a fresh mask of unbridled horror. Revenge, as they say, is a dish best served by utterly eviscerating your enemies in the cruelest ways imaginable. And I had merely started carving the first slice. As the inferno of scandal raged around Graham and Jules, I remained an unwavering pillar of cold determination. Friends and acquaintances would shoot me looks of disbelief and pity whenever details of the unfolding bloodbath emerged. Whispers about Graham's ruination swirled through the upscale country club circles the two of us once inhabited. "How are you holding up through all this, area?" one fellow mom dared ask during one of Ethan's baseball games. My lips curved into the faintest smile. "I'm doing just fine, Rita. In fact, I've never felt more liberated." The poor woman's eyes widened fractionally as the full implication sank in. This was no distraught victim. I was the vengeful architect of Graham's downfall. Because while his world burned in a pyre of scorching publicity and financial ruin, my own soared to new heights. Fidelity Games shattered mobile download records, the controversy only fanning the fires of its viral success. Sponsorships and licensing offers poured in daily. My technology empire, the one Graham had belittled and scorned for years, was officially an overnight juggernaut, all from delivering on my vow to make him never recover. The phone calls and pleas from Graham became increasingly unhinged as each new punishing legal setback landed. Alienated friends and investors abandoned him in droves. Companies scrambled to sever all ties and distance themselves from the toxic PR disaster. "You've gone too far this time, you deranged harpy." Graham's spittle nearly hit my face during one of his obscene middle-of-the-night voicemail rants. "I'll fight you in court until my dying breath. This obsessive vendetta will be your undoing." The chilling words may have shaken me once upon a time. Now, they only made me chuckle softly before deleting the message. Let him kick and scream into the void. His relevance was fading faster than his dwindling bank accounts. No court, no authority, would take the ramblings of a disgraced criminal seriously against the wronged wife harboring perfect records of his transgressions. No, the once infallible Graham Mitchell would have to learn the bitter taste of total defeat. And his pregnant mistress? Well, let's just say the strategically timed reproductive coercion lawsuit Mara filed on my behalf ensured Jules would be too overwhelmed treading water financially and legally to ever experience the glamorous high life she deluded herself into chasing. A fair and brutal cosmic penance for her sins against me. The ruination was complete, the debt settled. All that remained was ensuring Ethan inherited a world where neither of these cancers on society could ever escape its full, destructive consequences. 6 months after detonating the cataclysmic destruction of Graham and Jules' lives, I finally felt the first inklings of inner peace returning. The penthouse divorce proceedings had been little more than a formality. Once a judge saw the mountain of financial evidence Mara compiled, Graham's demands for an excessive settlement evaporated instantly. He was fortunate I didn't pursue criminal charges. As for Jules, the reproductive coercion case painted her as the hapless victim of Graham's manipulations. A small shred of sympathy I allowed, if only for the sake of her unborn child's future. My lawyers still ensured her settlement was as minimal as legally possible. I had the house, the assets, the income, and most importantly, my son's respecting adoration. "You're like a super genius, Mom." Ethan giggled as we exited the courthouse, twin smiles of jubilation plastered across our faces. "Dad's going to be so mad when he has to move into a tiny apartment." Pulling my little boy into an embrace, I stroked his hair tenderly. "Don't worry about your father, honey. This is a new start for us. Just you and me against the world." On the courthouse steps, Graham and Jules stood in uncharacteristic silence, broken shadows of their formerly arrogant selves. His overly tanned complexion had taken on an unhealthy pallor, his vacant eyes ringed with dark circles of stress. Jules managed a half-hearted sneer as we approached. "You won't get away with this, Arya. We'll appeal. Keep fighting until—" Graham cut her off with a weary shake of his head, not even meeting my gaze. "It's over, Jules. She has us completely boxed in. There's no more fighting to be done." The realization finally seemed to sink in for the former mistress as she shrank back, cradling her pregnant belly with a horrified expression. Walking past them, I allowed myself one last parting jab. "A word of advice?" I tossed a tiny smile over my shoulder. "Start getting used to living life as technological peasants. You'll never come anywhere near the success of my sad little design career, ever again." Ethan waved cheerfully at the gobsmacked pair as we left them to stew in the rubble of their miserable existence. Bye, Dad. Bye, Jules. Good luck with everything. His innocent, beaming face was the grandest reward imaginable for every ounce of effort and perseverance it took to deliver justice. Everything was going to be okay. We would thrive, while Graham and Jules's punishing downfall would echo infinitely. By the time we reached the car, Ethan was already engrossed in my new app release, marveling at the crisp graphics and addictive gameplay. A few more taps, and he discovered the new Deadbeat Dad's achievement, exhaling a soft whoop of pure delight. Watching him, I felt a profound sense of certainty that we were both destined for incredible lives, fueled by my talent and moral fortitude. The shadows of the past were banished at long last. The path forward beckoned with the warm promise of new beginnings, and this time, the future would be solely ours to craft.